So welcome everyone. I am Cesar Selection from the Philippines, and I'll be assisting Judy in this session. So I'd like to introduce our workshop uh, resource speaker. Judy Ganon is a PhD, MCIPD, FIH. She is a senior lecturer in the International Center for Coaching and Mentoring Studies in Oxford Brookes Business School at Oxford Brookes University. She leads the doctorate in coaching and mentoring and teaches on the MA in coaching and mentoring practice, as well as undertaking PhD supervision. Her main interests include the management and development of mentoring and coaching interventions. She is passionate about the need to understand mentoring and coaching programs and those who run them. See the book that or the publication that she has just made, The Many Things to Many People Report, Formal Mentoring Schemes and Their Management. She has also published in Personal Review, the International Journal of Human Resource Management, Education, Training, and Coaching at Work. So I have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Judy Cannon. Okay, take it away, Judy.
Thanks. If we start sharing the slides and then we can get going. So the session is really about developing an evidence base. And if we have the next slide on the structure, brilliant. So the idea is we're going to start to I'm going to introduce you a little bit to the topic and why I'm interested in it and why I've been researching it. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what you know from your experiences of managing mentoring programs and working in this area. We're going to put you into breakout rooms so you can think about some of the things that emerge from my work and see how they compare to your own experiences. The idea really being is that we don't have much of an evidence base on what mentoring program managers actually do. We have a sense of what they do, but there's lots of prescriptive experiences, but there's very little really empirical evidence. And I want to really start thinking about how we can then actually think about how we support program managers to deliver better mentoring relationships, because that's really what we're all about. So we'll be using breakout rooms, and we've pasted a link to our Google Doc, so you can edit in the breakout rooms. You can edit that Google Doc, assign to your breakout room, and then we can have a discussion that really kind of brings together everybody's insights in this area when we come back into the main room. So, next slide, please. Thanks. So really a little bit about me. So I'm really interested in how mentoring programs are managed and how they are managed in support of mentoring relationships. So I had an interesting experience in terms of when I did my PhD. Soon after that, one of the things that emerged from my doctorate was the value of mentoring to developing careers in the sector that I was interested in, which was hospitality, tourism and leisure. And just as I finished my PhD, I went off and did another postgraduate qualification. I wasn't very popular at home, but never mind, in coaching and mentoring. And I used that then to develop this, what's called the Bacchus Mentoring Programme, which is still running in Oxford Brookes. And it has about 300 mentors, industry mentors, and final year undergraduate students and master's students. But then I also became a bit of a champion for mentoring in Oxford Brookes itself. I became involved in lots of mentoring schemes that were being set up across the university, whether it was widening participation, community involvement. I helped set up a program in accountancy, helped set up a program in real estate. And then I also helped set various organizations set up mentoring programs. And I'm just really passionate about the area. And in 2015, I moved from being an academic in a School of Hospitality Management into full-time work in the International Centre for Coaching and Mentoring Studies. And one of the projects that I took up when I moved into the ICAMS team was to really try and develop this understanding of how mentoring programs work, how they're managed and how they're governed, and how that helps deliver better outcomes for mentoring participants. So in 2018-19, I did some research with a former doctoral student, and this led to the Many Things to Many People research. And last year, or this year, it was awarded this year. I got the EMCC Global Mentoring Award based on that research of trying to campaign for the advocacy of the work that mentoring program managers do. And really, this is all about a turn in mentoring research. As you know, if you look at it kind of in an academic world, we've kind of, initially we were really focused on mentoring relationships or the mentoring dyad. And then we shifted our focus into outcomes or return on investment. And now my argument is we're going to have another shift, another turn in mentoring research. We actually need to think about how programs set up, monitor, nurture, and ensure good outcomes in terms of mentoring relationships. So how do mentoring programs nurture relationships? How are they founded and managed to support participants and realize their aims? That's really what I'm really interested in. So next slide, please. So the research that I did is really built on the work of Penny Abbott and colleagues. Penny did this work back in 2010, and she'd run mentoring programs in South Africa, and this was part of her master's research. And I read this article, and you know, I'm sure all of you have come across academic articles before, but I actually cried reading this article because it just so reflected my experience of managing mentoring programs, of feeling like I was in the middle of it. I was trying to do really strategic things, but then I was trying to do lots of interpersonal things, you know, supporting relationships that weren't quite working, or there was a bit of miscommunication, or I was really trying to think about, I was researching what matches worked. I was planning huge events, as you can imagine, with 300 mentors and the same number of mentees. You know, my skill set was just pulled in so many different directions. And at times I felt like I was the center of the universe, but at times it felt really lonely, because at times I would be waking up thinking, in the middle of the night, thinking, oh, what if they don't get on? Or what happens? Have I really briefed the mentors well enough for this? So there was a sense of isolation, and just reading Penny's work was just so enlightening. And I thought, you know, we need more research and understanding the role of mentoring program coordinators. So I did this survey of mentoring programs, and then followed up interviews with program managers or coordinators. And we developed a database of about 250, 300 mentoring programs that we could find in the UK. And this is across youth services, social care and justice, education, entrepreneur development, refugee, and then various kind of programs in community that were kind of community-based ones that were based on kind of a focus of supporting particular race and ethnicity agendas. And it resulted in this, in the Many Things to Many People research. So next slide, please. So in the reports, what we identified was that there were that kind of three main areas that the data kind of arranged itself into when we were analysing it. Oh, sorry, my dog's just walked in. On your bed, on your bed, on your bed, good boy. Sorry. So the first was purpose, and this was really about how schemes or programs, sorry, I move between schemes, programs, interventions and initiatives. Sorry, don't mean to confuse you, they all mean the same thing to me. So the first one was really about purpose. So what did schemes say was their purpose? In terms of, was it about educational attainment? Was it about addressing gender inequality in a particular profession? Was it about supporting those who are moving from a care or institutional context into another? There was a transitioning element. So purpose, the section on purpose in the report is really heavily focused on what was the root of meaning for the mentoring scheme, and how did they originate and how did they develop. So some mentoring schemes went from very informal conversations to a more formal setting. Let's have a proper setup here. And developed then from, you know, having 5 mentoring pairs to 500 mentoring pairs. So I looked at size and scale and as well. So there were some schemes that, you know, they'd never had more than 20 mentees and 20 mentors. There were some programs that had gone from 5 to 500 and had like a national network of mentoring programs. And then what was also interesting was this aspect of sustainability and funding, because what was really evident was that many programs had started but had never managed to keep going. And this was often a problem of lack of succession planning. So a mentoring program coordinator had moved on, there was nobody to step into their shoes. Their funding disappeared for a year or so. So this whole thing of sustainability was a really big issue around that first P of purpose. And then the next section of the data was really about the practicalities. And this section really looks at how frequently did mentoring pairs meet? What forms of mentoring were taking place? So was it peer-to-peer mentoring? Was it reverse mentoring? Was it a more traditional form of somebody experienced and less experienced? So typically younger, but not always. Mentoring? Was it group mentoring? So there were lots of different examples of innovations in mentoring that I think we've seen kind of emerge in the last few years, though kind of the traditional standard dyadic mentoring, somebody more experienced, somebody less experienced, typically a younger person transitioning through a difficult point was evident. We also looked at the format of mentoring. So was it face-to-face mentoring? Was it e-mentoring? And what technologies were used? And that was really interesting thinking about it pre-COVID, because there was a shift towards e-mentoring. And when I started to then talk, when we started to do the interviews, it was interesting how mentoring scheme managers were talking about the difficulty in being able to articulate what they wanted from IT providers if they were going to use a system to deliver virtual mentoring, or whether they had just provided guidelines on very effective, you know, WhatsApp, email, or telephone mentoring. So there was a real kind of range there of provision. The practicality section also looks at that kind of life cycle aspect of mentoring, everything from, you know, how do you recruit your mentors and mentees? What guidance do you provide them with? What training? How do you manage their expectations? How do you match? And then how do you support those relationships? Do you provide any supervision to mentors? And there was a lot of examples of schemes where mentors were doing some really challenging work. If they were looking at, people who came out of social care or came out of post-institutional settings, who were supporting people who were on a drugs recovery basis, then actually supervision for the mentors was really, really important. And we also looked at evaluation, and evaluation also linked really strongly into influencers. So influencers were often linked to funders, but it might also be linked to key stakeholders who would champion the mentoring program or scheme. And also then we asked mentoring program managers about what quality benchmarks they were using, how were they standard setting, how were they understanding the quality of their program against other programs, and helping kind of have that kind of evolution in their service provision. And then we also looked at governance. So how were mentoring programs organized in terms of, some had steering committees, and some were basically had a mentoring champion who did it all. Others had champions in their organizations or related organizations that provided, they were the sounding board really to the program manager. And then we also looked at administration so to what extent were people using everything from, not exactly, we have an expression in the UK, the back of a beer mat, but, a very, very low tech, not quite paper and pen, but an Excel spreadsheet with some details on of mentors and mentees, right through to organizations that had designed their own IT administration systems for their mentoring programs. And then we also had the final section of the research was really about people, about who was it that were running these mentoring programs. What were their roles? What were their titles? What were their relationships to the programs? Had they actually developed the program or, been a mentor originally? What were their backgrounds? What were their qualifications and their characteristics? And then we also looked at what tasks do they do to manage their mentoring programs? What skills do they use? And then also their frustrations and satisfactions about running mentoring schemes. And there's also a final bit in the report that's about, oh, sorry, I'm gonna sneeze. No, I'm not. There's a final bit in the report that asks mentoring scheme program managers what support they really wanted, what would help them as well. So next slide, please. So what I want to talk about in this workshop is using your experience and expertise to get you talking about what do mentoring scheme coordinators do, what skills do they recognise that they're developing, and what does that mean for how we can support them better, because supporting mentoring program coordinators better should provide better outcomes for mentoring scheme participants. Next slide, please. So it's time for you guys to work. And what we've got is some Google slides. So now the dog wants to go out, sorry. He's just always very curious about what I'm doing in the office. So what we want you to do is we're going to break you, I think we can probably break you into, we've got 5 breakout rooms, but maybe we'll only break you into 3. And what we want you to think about is what activities do mentoring program coordinators do? loosely kind of working around using the 3Ps, but actually just use the first 2Ps. What challenge, so that's purpose and practicalities, what challenges do mentoring program coordinators face, and what support should we offer mentoring program coordinators? So next slide, please. So what you've got, if you follow the link to the Google Docs, when you're actually allocated to a breakout room, what we're just asking you to identify is we've got the topic. So what are the main purpose activities that you do as mentoring program managers? What are the main practicality activities that you're doing in terms of recruitment, matching? Are there any things that we haven't thought of and haven't emerged in our research? And then what do you think are the challenges for mentoring program managers? And what do you think support is needed for mentoring program managers? Hi everyone, I think we're all back now. So what I wanted to do then was start sharing my screen and just share some of the great things that you've been talking about in that session. Was there anything about so you've got there some like challenges of actually how to reach the students or the mentees, and knowing kind of what words are like, there's the like aspect of communication to mentees to find a mentor can be quite challenging as well. So there was a bit in our research about, you know, speaking everybody's language, sort of from the mentors to the mentees to the funders to various other bodies there. I think that's what that relates to. And then you think about and then the thing about workshops on mentoring standards, maybe that would be helpful for program managers. And then other important topics. Breakout room 2.
Actually, we try to do everything very
That's great.
Very yeah, we went through all the questions like kind of quickly. Actually, we are all mentoring scheme coordinators. 2 mentoring schemes work more with children under risks, and the other mentoring scheme coordinator, she's working with young adults, trying to get them into the jobs and working in a school. And funding is obviously one of the main things, sustainability through funding. If funding is not provided, then yeah, we cannot do our work properly. And one big thing was also the networking and the promoting the program, explain the sense to different, especially the one who is working with the school, always to make the program visible, explain why it can actually be not only time consuming for the school, but also help or support. One of the jobs is to have the bigger picture, have a vision for the program, communicate this vision to donors, employees, to make them to make them actually to support the scheme. Then it comes back to the practicalities. The fundraising is one of the daily businesses.
Perennial issue.
Yeah, for all of us, recruiting new volunteers, especially for big programs who have a short running time. It's a big challenge to find enough and the right volunteers again and again and again. Then organize trainings, different trainings, like very practical stuff, but also on another level to make the volunteers fit for the program. The new media is obviously a big topic now because of COVID. Online matching, always changing, applying different things to the program. It's very hard to be sustainable right now. And it also, I think it needs to be, one needs to be very brave also to try out different things. And I think that also has like the positive side. It's also quite interesting, like with the summit, that online solutions can be really interesting sometimes.
Yeah.
And other activities that we wanted to add is supervision for volunteers and families was in one of the programs a big topic. Group sessions also for parents, organization of events, training. Yeah. The challenges for two of us is that we are quite in a lonely position, being the manager of a program, and I think that's a big issue. It's kind of hard to find people to exchange because everyone is short on time. So if it's not in your own organization, I mean, a summit can be one solution or one place where you can have exchange, but it's definitely for many of us a lonely position. And the other thing is to find dedicated volunteers who are motivated for exactly that type of volunteer work, who can be, who is obviously rewarding, but who's also, they will face challenges, and it's so hard to do this selection in a way that we can assure that we can do matches that actually last until the end of the program, and especially working with young people at risk or young people who've been through different, who have faced difficulties in daily life all the time. It's a big challenge not to reproduce this situation of it hasn't worked for you. And especially now, I don't know if you've faced this topic also. Working in a bigger city like Zurich, there's a lot of expat workers who come to the city, who are looking for things to do, give meaning to their lives. They have free time, but it's always a big challenge, I find, to find the right way.
But then they also move on,
and they will go on, And support could be a recognition for the work you do from the people you work for and with, from the volunteers, or also the children or youth in the program, but ideally also from colleagues or other professionals, or also from a director, someone who's actually working on top of you. To keep going.
And I think that's part of the advocacy role. I think that's how we can try and promote that. I think there's a really important things. Thank you so much, Andrea. And I can see you've also got some points in terms of importance of use. It's not obvious in many settings. A lot of explanation and work is needed to keep it going. And I think that's really, really important. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then breakout room 3. Oh, we are running out of time, but see how far we can get breakout room 3, because I know you had some great points in there as well.
Okay, so it was really amazing because I was with Julia in the breakout room, and we worked together in a European project for the mentoring, and it was funny. So some main purpose activities with both projects are focused on transition from an institutional care setting to a non-institutional one. For us, we try to have a limit of the number of mentoring relationships that the coordinator may support, up to 20, to ensure the quality. Also, so main practicalities activities is one-to-one community-based mentoring. For us, the minimum steps for mentor are recruitment, screening, training, selection. For us, training and screening is a part of the selection, everything. Matching, support, and evaluation. And we also make a minimum steps for mentees, and we make all the cycle again: recruitment, screening, preparation, we make a mix between a screening and preparation with mentees, matching, support, and evaluation. We have a concrete mentoring frame designed by the Girona's University. We make with different projects a frame to evaluate the mentoring relationships, and also a development of case management tools for each peer or each relation. And we include other activities, which could be informal group activities to promote a sense of belonging between participants and mentoring organization. And we think this type of activities help the trusting relationships. Yeah. We also make some networking actions with local actors, because for us mentoring is complementary to all the companion we make to the youth, all the educational intervention that we make to youth. And also we made some advocacy actions. Yeah. Some challenge for us, the challenge is changing context and in target group conditions. Sometimes it's a challenge. Also knowing how to ensure appropriate support when the mentee's conditions change, sometimes change during the relationship, and we need to give more support to this mentoring relationship. Also all the role shaping that we made in training and support, and keeping a balance and sustainable growth without losing quality, because sometimes the need is bigger than what we can offer as a structured organization.
Yeah.
And the supporting actions could be external support from mentoring networks, training, exchange, support material, recognition by policymakers, also institutional and non-institutional cooperation with local actors to work together from some needs of the youth, and from funders. Not all are appropriate, but some of them are a support for us. And the critical thinking in the internal team. Sometimes in the ethical dilemmas, the internal team is the clue to have the support. And I was out. And the conclusion that we made was, I don't know if you could, that this is a complex role that needs both internal and external support and a clear structure and definition, and that interacts with complex conditions also in the context.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I mean, I think we've covered a massive amount of territory there, and you've generated some really important points about, you know, the experiences of kind of trying to hold all of this when you're running a mentoring program. And it's interesting to see us getting to the point of actually what will help us, and our networks and opportunities to share how we tackle problems is really important. And resources, I mean, funding is one level of resource, but also actually the time to be able to actually unpack all the stuff we do and think about actually where do we need to divert attention to when we face particular challenges, whether it's COVID, whether it's other things that we're facing for us, our programs. So I don't know if there's any final observations left, but thank you so much for participating in this. I run a small network in the UK, and I also work with the Scottish Mentoring Network, and I developed a little network called the Stamina Mentoring Network, just a stamina based on sustainable mentoring network is kind of the acronym that we extracted into Stamina. And we've started to do things like podcasts and briefings and a few webinars. So if anybody's ever interested in those, you can find out more details there. But I just think it's really important that we talk about the work that we do and think about how we can support each other and get better as mentoring scheme coordinators and managers, and make sure that, you know, mentoring does do the job that we really want to do in the service of others. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Judy. That was so great.
Yeah, thank you.